One. All right, so this is the start of our fifth podcast, if I'm not mistaken. And I think we wanted to carry on from what we were discussing the last time, which is more about entrepreneurial experience and our journeys throughout this, right, guys? So there's a lot of things that we can discuss. I'm not really sure what we want to start off with, but something I'm interested about, and maybe it's just like from the text that you guys have been sending me, like is about how do you choose your tech stacks and like the tech that you guys decide to use. I think that's like a very interesting concept because there's just so much options nowadays, at least for me. So I just want to see like what do you guys think on how you select things or how do you decide on what to use?
Wow, well, you
I
really
think
just jumped right into the deep end. You were like, oh, entrepreneurship, and then you're like, hey, what tech stack? How do you choose your tech stack? Like the first question of the day.
Yeah, take it from a nerd from me.
um,
Yeah.
I guess well, really, kind of when from my side is like when working with a team, you definitely want to take good input from who is your kind of your CTO or one of your lead developers, and in making an assessment of what is the most kind of up to date tech stack and what's most appropriate for also the kind of product you're building. I think that's typically how you would make that decision. Just
yeah, I think it's really important to be like very flexible in this regard. Like kind of something that we've been going through like ourselves throughout this whole process has been kind of an ongoing discussion with me and George, especially in specifics of like choosing our cloud provider. Like we just recently switched over from AWS to Alibaba Cloud, 30% cheaper, so a huge cost savings. And I think that's like as long as you're listening to your team and your team is really pushing for what they think is best, I think that's how you'll always end up with the best outcomes.
maybe the talent pool as well. I think also understanding, um, yeah, understanding, in the talent market, what are most people using, and how that will also play a role in kind of what tech stack you're choosing. I think in that, um, sorry, someone just keeps calling me. Yeah, so I think that definitely plays a role because you definitely want to have build a good team, and I think just understanding who is there in the kind of the job market, and what they're using can also indicate what you should be using as a company.
Have you guys ever
I would
thought
add that
about the
you
more? Oh, I don't. You can go. You can go. Sorry.
okay. I would add that it's also like something you just have to go off with. Like you have to choose a stack and then optimize. Because I remember in the first startup that we did with Thomas and Errol, we had a whole spreadsheet for like every single option of a tech stack, and that was very inefficient. I think you should just roll with it and then optimize as you go. That would be another advice. Errol?
Yeah, I was just gonna ask because we only really like me, George, Thomas, the three of us were really only focusing on startups like pre-seed, just making it out there, creating the MVP. So we didn't really think about more like the very long term. But I'm curious, like when you guys like switched over to Alibaba, have you thought about the more economic and the political side of like, hey, maybe in like 5 years, something's gonna go on with China, maybe Alibaba Cloud's gonna shut down. Is that something that you guys have to think about, or were you just like, nah, it's cheaper, we'll stick with it for now? I'm curious.
Man, trust me when I say this. There's been very, very heated arguments that go back and forth with me and George. George is very, very pro China, very, like, very, very bullish on China. I'm much more bullish on the American side. And, at the end of the day, it's, if it meets the requirements and they're doing it well now, and why not? Like, who's to say that they can't? Cloud can always be anywhere. It's not stuck to one place, but like. We had a whole bunch of like compliance issues with our cloud provider that it needed like specifically for the central bank, that we needed to be specifically within the Gulf region. And so, we worked that out with them, and that was totally fine. And, that was my major concern in the beginning, but it figured itself out as long as you go down the rabbit hole with it.
I'm kind of the peacekeeper between this dynamic between Zayn and George here, and I think another thing as well is that um, besides the fact that it's much cheaper, I think that Alibaba has also provided very good customer service and being able to help us meet with those compliance needs from regulators. Because given that we are, in the fintech space, regulation unfortunately is something that you have to deal with on a daily basis. And even though AWS, Microsoft, Google, they're definitely much more user friendly. I think from when you interact with those products, I think that Alibaba has a wide array of products, and their customer service has been impeccable, and they've been able to really help us get us everything we need for our regulators, and that is a testament to kind of China's involvement in these emerging markets that have a big dependency on regulation, and that China wants to make sure that they can cater to those markets where there is extreme bureaucracy and regulation, and they just want to make sure that anyone who wants to start a business can use their services, as opposed to when we were dealing with AWS, it was very difficult to get in contact with them to even get the kind of documentation that we needed to provide to regulators, because unfortunately the regulators for some reason are still not confident on cloud storage and stuff like this. So we needed to provide a lot of documentation that Alibaba was able to help us with.
So I actually do have a question for you guys, because I'm certainly like much earlier in the startup journey, I guess, compared to literally everyone on this call right now. And it's still related about like maybe the tech stack. Earlier before, Seth, you kind of mentioned that it really depends on your client's needs to really dictate what to create, or what should be the decisions for the CTO or the lead developer. I think that does make a lot of sense, but maybe just side shifting a little bit, I guess the question for all of you guys, I feel like for me in my past experiences, we go through a lot of like iterations of the product, because we have to figure out like what is verifiable, what is truly demand, what is like truly a product market fit, right? And so like it's kind of this battle between, okay, do we like build something that kind of works now but is really buggy or really hacky, versus something that's very established but you don't like know if this is the right direction? How do you guys maybe find the balance between these two, especially in markets that are maybe more like very serious, like the stakes of having fintech startups? You have to like do it right or you just can't survive, right? Or if you're doing real estate for Errol, you have to do it well, otherwise it's like a problem, right? So I mean, maybe my question to you guys, bottom line, is how do you find that balance between building a product that fits needs but also is like actually maybe built well?
All right, I'll take that one, unless Errol wants to take that one. I don't know who's feeling this one. Well, like kind of the journey where we started when we were first starting out, is we literally built like a crappy monolith, just whatever tech stack we could, that we could work with any development team, to just create something that was kind of a proof of concept. And I feel like in my previous ventures, it's kind of always been proof of concept before MVP. You're trying to just figure something out, and just like, well, especially with this product, it was like people here, they need to see visually how something works. So you kind of just creating something that could like have some kind of functionality, just to show how the flow works, how the user experience works. Then we're like, okay, this is something that people really want to see after you kind of survey people. And then we're like, okay, let's take it up to the next level. But I would say it's not like something you pick from the very beginning. It's a process that continuously gets improved.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's something that continuously just has to be improved as you go along. You start kind of in a position where you maybe are not making the best decisions, and it is like kind of a much buggier, less stable version. But I think it also kind of depends on what kind of focus your business is. If you're operating in a market that is different from somewhere where it already exists somewhere else, but the focus is that you're trying to get it through regulatory barriers, and you're trying to make it applicable to the region that you're working in, it really is important that everything works very, very smoothly, because everyone already expects it to work, like it just work, right? Like it should already just flow completely well. And, in those cases, there's a lot of documentation as well you can find from other companies of how they've gone about it. So, yeah.
Are you guys like more hesitant just because you're in a space that I guess like has more regulation? Are you more hesitant to now introduce like new technology or try out something that's made, where otherwise you maybe in the industry like just I don't know, soft in your industry, you're not able to be as innovative as other industries just because of the regulation, just because, if you guys fuck up, you can potentially lose your clients in millions of dollars. Is that a concern that you guys have?
So I think that in this case scenario, it's kind of like there hasn't been the foundation laid for those innovations to be made. And that's why people look at open banking as critical infrastructure. And so definitely we have a lot of ideas that we really want to come out with later down the line that I would call innovative on even a global level, that we would want to implement, but we're saving that for later because right now the foundation hasn't been laid to even create those starting level products, and that's what we've you can look. It depends kind of what region you're looking at as well, because there's innovative solutions that maybe aren't considered innovative to a developed region like the States, but maybe they can be applicable and considered innovative to regions like Africa or Middle East, Southeast Asia. And in our case scenario, where you have kind of in Africa, where a lot of people they didn't go through kind of open banking and banked. It was really the telecom providers that provided people essentially these fintech products that were done by the mobile phone providers, where people would exchange their mobile credit as a form of currency. That is like something that maybe we wouldn't call innovative, but it's something that hasn't been done in the States. So I think in this case scenario, we are trying to build the open banking infrastructure for the country. And that's the prerequisite then to build all those innovative products on top of it. And that's with kind of the access to data to then create better products.
And to balance it off, I would say that, for example, in China, fintech, the fundamental layer was built by private companies. They really didn't care if the regulator was catching up with them or not. They were just moving forward, and then the regulator were trying to catch up at a later stage. So that's another way to do it as well. And even in a very bureaucratic environment, because China is a bureaucratic environment. So to balance off the thoughts of Seth and Zane, also, you do also want to just release a product, get it out to customers, and then have the regulator see what is the correct way to regulate the product, to be able to learn from you, learn from your experiences. And it could be really helpful in a lot of emerging markets and even in the more established markets for anything.
Yeah.
So is it? Oh yeah, no, you can go. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna, kind of build on that slightly of what George just kind of said, and that the regulators I think are honestly looking for a lot of guidance nowadays in what they should be doing because technology is moving so fast. So, sometimes we don't want to cloud their focus in a way like where we don't want to introduce something that's like too advanced because there is a whole set of issues that we have to like deal with to get to that point. But like currently where we're at is that we really think that the infrastructure is really important right now and that's top priority. And then all of these other things are subsets that are created under that infrastructure.
And what you guys say that the flow right now is you create a foundation, create some sort of MVP, show it to regulators, and then the regulators are like, okay, we like it, we think we could regulate it in this way or that way, and then you can go on from there and build the subsets and build the more innovative things on top of the foundation. So is it like MVP, go to regulators, build more, or is it just like you have to go to regulators first, see exactly what they allow or don't allow, and then you can build the foundation from there? Like how much talking with the government and the laws and all that have you done before you guys started building? I'm just curious in the Gulf region.
Yeah, this is a long process. We definitely, we were meeting with a lot of banks, and because this is kind of how originally the Plaid started as well. It was all with this kind of desire to create really nice consumer-facing products, fintech products, of course. And you realize, hey, there's an obstruction of why I can't create this product, and so we didn't even realize there was a lack of open banking because actually, for the last, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years we were living in the States. So we were just interacting with American products and we assumed that open APIs and third-party providers such as like Plaid that are aggregators of these APIs can just exist out there, and this stuff is available in the region. And so we realized that this is something that's actually not available in the region, and we're like, okay, so we needed to, when we talk about MVP as well, we're kind of specifically referring to more our consumer facing product, which is the P2P product, because that's what we came into originally wanting to create. There is no way right now in the Middle East there is no easy P2P solution. Right now in the Middle East, you have to use IBAN numbers, so a huge alphanumeric string to send money to someone, or that's within your banking app, or you have to generate a payment gateway link that you have to send to someone on WhatsApp. So the recipient, if I'm a recipient, there's a two-way flow here. The recipient now has to send a link to someone's WhatsApp, where then they have to input their card details, and that's how you make a payment to the person's account. So we're like, okay, well, this is a terrible thing. Why hasn't anything changed yet? And so then we realized, okay, the regulators aren't going to force the banks to use your solutions. So you just have to work with one bank to begin with, provide your standardized API to create open banking, and then as you move on, you gather more banks and you become an aggregator that essentially becomes kind of a Plaid or even something like a Zelle. But then of course, the goal originally was to create that P2P product, that is the MVP, and we showed that MVP to the banks and to the regulators, and we can create the bare minimum MVP, but we still require some of the infrastructure from open banking to create the best the user experience.
So that was really interesting to me. I'm sorry if I'm interrupting, but I don't know if you guys want to continue like building on top of that. Something that I just find very interesting is just how as you were talking about the story of like these problems that these users are having. I know we're talking more about regulators. I'm not sure maybe how like useful it would be in the broader context. So I just want to like try to side shift back to maybe the startup, like how can it be applicable to maybe other startups? Like how have you found maybe that disruptive sort of aha insight in terms of like the experience or the customer user journey, right, if you will, that makes it such that it's so difficult? Like how were you able to really figure that out? That's something I'm interested in asking.
Like as in, how were we able to figure out what to deliver to customers?
I feel like that's a little bit of a question, like a different question. Certainly, that is definitely also part of it. But I'm more interested on like you understand that there's probably a problem, right? Like to create the P2P, this product, right? There has to be like an actual demand for that. But even before the demand, it's really more there was a problem in the first place where it's maybe not as great as what's in the States, or maybe it's just not what people are looking for, right? Like to me, when you're saying WhatsApp using this process, it's screaming like, wait, that sounds really sketchy. That sounds really scammy. That sounds really like not only inconsistent because you're like switching all these different apps. It just seems like a total, I don't want to like curse on this thing, but it sounds like a shit show, right? Like that's really what it sounds like. So like how do you go about finding those customers that would give you these details of like showing you this process? Or are you guys also customers and you experience this yourself? Like I'm just trying to wonder, how do you get such a clear insight into the problem?
Yeah, honestly, I would say this is entirely from our own like experience. It's just like I'll just be in a situation and someone will say, "Oh, just send me this link" or something like that, and I will be so frustrated with them, and then just like I don't even feel like doing this. I'll just give it to you in cash. And to me, that's a very sad thing to have to say, that I'll just pay you in cash rather than actually trying to come up with a new or innovative solution that you don't require any existing legacy infrastructure like cash, right? Yeah. I really think it's from personal frustration more than anything. It's just I'm so frustrated that we need to get something like this for myself, at least, And then there's a whole other subset of another group of people that I would say I think are really important in this region, are very underrepresented, which is like a whole underbanked population of typically Indian, Filipino, Pakistani immigrants that come into the country, and they're completely cut off from banking services. They have no access at all to modern day banking. Like, of course they may be able to open up a bank account. Even if they are, it's a very difficult process to do. They're often, sent around to different places. and it's just not the best experience for them.
And the KYC is so hard as well. George, yeah, go ahead, George.
All right, I would add that also it's like ideas move around, right? If a lot of like Chinese entrepreneurs didn't go to America, there would never be an Alibaba because they'd never see like an Amazon, and there would never be Meituan if they didn't see Groupon. And we kind of have the same idea here. Like a lot of Kuwaitis travel to America for studying, whether that's like for high school or for college most of the time. So they do know that there is a better product out there. They're familiar with the user experience of Venmo or Cash App. So that also helps to introduce a product that is similar, and also adds to the frustration, because when they come back and they realize they don't have this product, it adds on to the frustration. And if you can tap into that, understand it more, you can build a product that nobody has thought of building, but everybody needs.
Yeah, and even to add on that more, I think that there's two things I actually want to mention. So one is that just kind of being very observant when you're traveling, and understanding the different kind of payment experiences that people are having in different countries. So that kind of played into also how the product has developed with our team, is that George had a lot of experience in China and Russia. We had a lot of experience in America. And then, of course, we saw the issue in the Middle East, and then that came together. But what we've seen is kind of our product go through this metamorphosis where we've taken elements from different things around the world, trying to focus on what could cater best to this market. What are certain features that maybe have been used with Alipay? What are certain features that have been used with SPV in Russia? What are certain features that have been used with Venmo, Cash App? And we kind of take those different features and we're like, okay, this could work here. This doesn't work. Maybe there's maybe the people in this region don't have as much of an appetite for risk, so we should remove this feature. And it's just understanding like, oh, maybe these people like to interact with QR codes more. Maybe NFC is a big thing here. How do we try to leverage NFC into our solutions? So I think just understanding both how people interact with those products in different parts of the world, and how people are culturally in the region where you're trying to solve the problem, I think is a really good strategy.
Errol, do you have any things that you want to maybe add on upon that from your experience as well? That's yeah, it's very cool.
Well, no, I've always just been kind of what was already said. I've always been a proponent of just diversity of ideas, and I don't want this to just be like the American perspective or the American wokeness coming out, but at the same time, like there is a good point. Just like if you have a lot of different experiences in different regions, you can really see what products work in, let's just say, China as opposed to the US. And the biggest one that I've seen was, of course, Alipay, where it's like, you go to Shanghai, like everyone pays with their phone. You go to dinner, you can split on your phones. And yet over here in the US, everyone just has to be like, oh, how much do you owe me? How much do you owe me? Send me Venmo. And it's getting that diversity, getting that experience just in the world is so valuable to building a product. And I think there's also something to be said about, Thomas, what you told me a little bit ago, how it's so important to, if you're building a startup, to also have different interests, because then you can go into these different areas. Let's just say you're building a travel app, you can still potentially, I don't know, work in real estate or work in another industry as well, where you can bring some experiences from there into the current business you're building. And I think that's just so important. And I really wish that more people kind of thought like that, as opposed to just being, no, we're going to focus on this region. We're going to completely understand this market. We're going to build a product here, and then that's it. So, yeah, I'm kind of ranting a little bit, but yeah, I 100% agree with this idea of like diversity of experience, bringing it from different areas and just building like a kick-ass product from this diversity.
Yeah, 100%. And this is something that is I can't remember who was speaking. I don't. I think it was actually Kanye who was saying this, and it makes actually a valid point with excluding everything else. This was one thing that he said right now, and he said that we're going through a renaissance period right now, where multidisciplinary skills and ideas are valued a lot more than just focusing on one particular thing. And I think that's very much the case. When you look at lots of founders, working in many different, weird businesses and weird products, and you just start taking things from different areas, and like, a weird example, like I'll talk about myself in a second, but another example is like Adam Newman, WeWork. Prior to that, he had a business where he was where he had babies' garments that were padded for safety. So it's like, it's just these random experiences can in some odd way give you insight to creating another thing, or just understanding the process of creating a business or whatever it may be. So, when you kind of look at, the experiences that you guys have had, or the experience that George or Zane has had, or what I had, I was working in something related to kind of the vaporizer business. So that was like a slightly interesting and different space to what we're currently working in, and just taking little things that you learn from everywhere and applying it.
Okay. I think we're almost there, like to the end of the podcast, but I do have one question left for you guys. Maybe it's just from, absorbing all these like really interesting experiences that you guys have had so far. Um, Given that you experienced the problems yourselves, you're also like dealing with regulators for at least the Kem team, right? And then Errol is also like figuring out how to find, I guess I don't know, like there's like he has his own experience as well. I kind of want to, center to one generalized question about how you guys maybe find the motivation to solve the problems that you have sought out to solve, right? I find it very interesting that Zane was talking about his own experience and like, having to use cash instead. It's just like, oh, if I have to do this, that's just like the worst thing ever. Maybe it's, a question of what do you guys, how do you maybe have your own internal motivation, and for maybe the leaders in charge, how do you guys maybe create motivation for your own team and like show them this is such a frustrating problem that like everyone should be wanting to solve this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that the key, in my own opinion, having started and launched a few startups, is that you need to establish a belief system that is not even related to business as much, but just how you view the world. And I think it's very apparent with Sess and Zane, for example. They really value freedom. I think they come from a kind of a more American perspective, that freedom is super important, and any barriers should be taken down. And I really think that they take this core belief, and it motivates them to build a product. For example, like here with KNet links, and which are like the links you send by WhatsApp, and opening bank accounts. What they have right now, it's all a barrier to the people that are underserved, to the people that come here to work. And we're looking to knock down those barriers. For myself, I look a lot more at how do you cater to pretty much everyone? How do you make sure that everyone on this world is able to provide for themselves with like basic nutrition? And that led me to start the community group buying application, seeing what was done in China, and that was really my motivation.
Zane, you're up, man.
Yeah. So I like, honestly, I think it's really important that like everyone themselves has their own motivations and they have their own reasonings for everything. My reason for doing this is completely different from Seth's and completely different from George's. And I think that is something that's really, really special about it, is that, like, for example, I'm a very big crypto. I'm very bullish on crypto. That's something that I want to hopefully introduce later down the line. George is very big on, China and like the increasing impact that it's going to have on the rest of the world, and really the dominance that it's going to have on the rest of the world, and the way that it's actually connecting institutions much more so than the American ones. And that's something that they really have been proven to be successful with. But, I think like just seeing like the people that like, you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, and like how they're not able to access some of these services. We have the technology, we have the wealth to do it. Why hasn't it been done? So I'm just going to read something that like I sent as a message back to the group a while ago, like our like private group chat between us. And it was just like, we kind of send these kinds of things every once in a while about like, what's going on and what the problem is. And so I was talking to Sethia, who's our maid, and she was saying that like at the hospital, they expect everyone to have KNet cards. To have a KNet card, you have to have at least 100 KD, which means all of these people cannot have cards because they send all their money to their home country. She and many other people have to go around the hospital and beg Kuwaitis to use their cards for a transaction of 1 KD in some cases. most of them just end up going home because they refuse to treat them. So, you know, that's the kind of stuff that we just try and like, you know, encourage so that everyone understands the importance of what we're doing here, and that, you know, we all really understand and respect and have reverence for the people that we're trying to serve.
That's a tough one to follow, guys. That's a tough. That was very heartfelt. Yeah, when it comes to, I guess, motivation to build, I feel like, you know, kind of what they said. It's like we all have our own reasons, but at the end of the day, we all feel that we're doing the right thing. How whatever our reason is, you know, I really believe it's, you know, it's democratizing financial services so that people can control their own money and their hard-earned money, and you don't exclude people from those particular services, and based on income, that, you know, people with higher incomes have access to these services, where you just, you know, uh, essentially create a power dynamic where these people are just, you know, stuck in the same position, and they're not able to flourish. And yeah, it's really just also to actually execute, you know, aside from the fact of what kind of motivates us and drives us to do this, also the execution. You just have to have a very I don't want to say negligence for risk, but maybe just a very high appetite for risk at, you know, as someone who gets into startups. You know that the odds are stacked against you, but when you feel that you're doing the right thing, it's definitely a lot easier. But I think also being with a team makes it a lot better, because there is a point where there is different points where some of us were out of the country, where one of us would be based, you know, in Kuwait working on this project, and or when I was here at one point working on it by myself, and, you know, everyone else was, you know, kind of spread out. And, you know, being in the location by yourself, it can sometimes really get to you. And I think having a good team of people who are like, maybe not always like-minded, but have, you know, have the same beliefs and the good that you're doing, it makes it so much easier to just do what you're doing and just to go through the motion every single day and keep working and keep getting the job done. And that's my 2 cents.
All right. So, Errol, I'm not sure if you have any last regards or remarks. I'll let you speak.
I can't follow up either one of those. I'll be honest with you, man.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, like at the end of the day, like, yeah, I work at kind of a startup, but I'm a software engineer. Like, I'm not absolutely passionate about the vision, and that's just a sad reality. Is I'm really not. I enjoy what I'm doing. TLDR, for those who don't know, it's just basically a real estate company. We're doing a CRM for them, for these really big management companies like REITs and so on. And it's something I enjoy, but I wasn't there in the beginning to really understand the problem. And I think I'm in the job about like 2 months now, and I can definitely see it, but I can't relate to it as much as, you know, the three of you can. I unfortunately just can't. And I think it doesn't have to be something that you immediately see a problem and you're like, we have to find a solution to it. Because for me, the more I'm working, the more I'm seeing the problems that we're solving. And it's slowly coming over time. I'm not sure, you know, which one is better. If it's better just to, you know, see a problem head on and be like, I have to make a solution right now, or if it's better just to kind of see the problem in little chunks every now and then build a solution as you're seeing them. So I'm not too sure, but yeah, I mean, these two gentlemen, Zain and Stefan, you guys just basically knocked out the park. I can't really follow up. I don't know any Kanye quotes either, unfortunately. So yeah. But yeah, I mean, nothing else to say on my part.
Well, I'll end with my piece. I think, yeah, I definitely think the insights from Zain and Seth, they were really, again, like, how do you follow up with that, right? Right now for me, I'm currently in a space where I'm still trying to navigate, maybe not the problem per se, but really the seriousness of the problem, right? Like, if it really affects people, then it's really painful or really disables them in some way. For me, I'm still trying to see, like, to what degree is my view of maybe their disablement like reality or not. But, you know, we'll have to figure out how to really navigate that. I think everyone here like has gone through so many different experiences, and we certainly have a lot to learn from each other, but it's just really great that we were able to talk, all of us together. So thank you for that.
Thank you,
Yeah.
guys.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. Okay, so we can just end the call here, and then yep. All right.
Thanks, guys.
Sorry, give me a sec.